Ambassador Jean-Woo Park straightened his dark blue uniform as he walked through the gleaming corridors of Harmony Prime Station. The massive space station floated in neutral territory, its silver walls reflecting the light from distant stars. Today would mark the most important diplomatic meeting in human history, and Jean-Woo felt the weight of his entire species resting on his shoulders. Beside him, Admiral So-min Lee moved with military precision. Her sharp eyes scanned every alien delegate they passed, noting their weapons, their body language, their obvious disdain. She had fought in the border wars for 3 long years and knew exactly what these creatures thought of humanity. "Remember," Jean-Woo whispered as they approached the Great Assembly Hall, "we came here to make peace. No matter what they say, we stay calm." The hall was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed the swirling colors of the nearby nebula. Delegates from dozens of alien species filled the curved seating arrangements, their strange forms creating an unsettling rainbow of colors and shapes. At the center sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Chancellor Veltar the Kethvar Empire dominated one side of the room. His body looked like living crystal, sharp and angular, reflecting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. He had ruled his empire for over 800 years and viewed younger species the way humans might look at insects. Across from him sat war leader Thakmor of the Zephyrian Confederacy. His insect-like form clicked and buzzed as he spoke to his advisors, his 4 arms gesturing dismissively. The Zephyrians had been humanity's primary enemy in the recent conflicts, their aggressive expansion bringing them into direct confrontation with human colonies. Other species filled the remaining seats. The Altarians looked almost humanoid, but with skin that shifted colors based on their emotions. The Velkari resembled massive birds with hands instead of wings. Each species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, while humanity had only left Earth 3 decades ago. Jean-Woo took his assigned seat, noting how far from the center the human delegation had been placed. It was a subtle insult, but one that spoke volumes about how the council viewed his species. "Honored delegates," the session moderator announced, "we gather today to address the ongoing conflicts that threaten galactic stability. The newest member of our community has requested to present their proposals." Jean-Woo stood and walked to the central platform, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. He activated his translator device and began to speak, his voice carrying clearly throughout the hall. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, humanity comes before you today not as conquerors or supplicants, but as equal-seeking peaceful coexistence." He paused, watching the subtle reactions around the room. Several aliens exchanged what appeared to be amused glances. "We propose a comprehensive mutual defense agreement," Jean-Woo continued, "where all species pledge to protect each other's territorial integrity. Additionally, we suggest creating shared research facilities where our combined knowledge can benefit everyone." Chancellor Veltar's crystalline form seemed to vibrate with what Jean-Woo slowly realized was suppressed laughter. The sound that emerged was like wind chimes in a hurricane, beautiful but somehow mocking. "Young human," Veltar said, his voice carrying the authority of centuries, "your enthusiasm is charming. However, mutual defense implies equality of capability. What could your species possibly offer in defense of civilizations that mastered space travel before your ancestors discovered fire?" War leader Thakmor's mandibles clicked rapidly, producing a sound that the translators interpreted as aggressive amusement. "The mammals speak of territorial integrity, while their colonies cower behind defensive shields whenever our scouts appear. Perhaps they should focus on learning to defend themselves before offering to defend others." Jean-Woo felt heat rising in his cheeks, but maintained his diplomatic composure. "With respect, Chancellor, every species brings unique strengths to any alliance. Humanity's rapid technological advancement and adaptability could prove valuable assets." "Rapid advancement?" The Altarian representative's skin shifted to patterns of what Jean-Woo's briefings had indicated meant condescension. "You have barely learned to build ships that don't explode when they enter hyperspace. Our children's toys are more advanced than your finest military vessels." Admiral Lee's hand tightened on her datapad, her knuckles showing white through her skin. She made careful notes of each dismissal, each insult, each casual display of contempt. Her military training had taught her to observe and remember everything. "Perhaps," suggested another delegate from the back of the chamber. Humanity would better serve galactic civilization by accepting a more appropriate role. Resource extraction, basic manufacturing. Simple tasks suited to your current capabilities. The chamber filled with what passed for laughter among the various species. Jean Wu looked around the room and saw the same expression on every face. Amusement at the presumptuous children who thought they belonged at the adults' table. "We came here offering partnership," Jean Wu said quietly, his diplomatic training warring with growing anger. "We have proposals for trade agreements, scientific cooperation, cultural exchange programs." "All very sweet," Chancellor Veltar interrupted, "but ultimately unnecessary. The galaxy functioned perfectly well before humanity stumbled into space, and will continue to do so whether you participate or not." The dismissal was complete and absolute. Around the chamber, delegates returned to their private conversations, effectively ignoring the human ambassador as if he had already left. Admiral Lee watched it all, memorizing faces and taking notes that would soon become very important. The second day of negotiations began with what Ambassador Jean Wu Park had hoped would be serious discussions about ending the conflicts that had torn through space for 3 years. Instead, he found himself facing something far worse than yesterday's condescension. Chancellor Veltar stood at the central podium, his crystalline form catching the light as he addressed the assembled delegates. His voice carried the weight of ancient authority as he spoke words that would change everything. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding the human question," he announced, pausing dramatically as the chamber fell silent. "After careful consideration of their capabilities and place in galactic civilization, we propose the following terms." Jean Wu felt his stomach drop as he watched the alien faces around him. There was no negotiation in their expressions, only the satisfied look of predators who had cornered their prey. Humanity will accept protectorate status under joint council oversight, Veltar continued, each word falling like a hammer blow. All human military forces will be limited to system defense only. No human vessel may leave their territory without council approval and escort. The chamber erupted in approving sounds from dozens of alien throats. War leader Thakmor's mandibles clicked in rapid approval, while the Altarian delegate's skin shifted to patterns of satisfaction. Admiral Sumin Lee sat perfectly still beside Jean Wu, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her breathing had become carefully controlled. Her hand moved slowly to her datapad, recording every word of what was essentially a declaration of human slavery. Furthermore, Veltar continued with obvious pleasure, all human interstellar trade must be conducted through approved council intermediaries. A 15% administrative fee will be collected on all transactions to fund proper oversight of human activities. Jean Wu stood slowly, his diplomatic training screaming at him to remain calm, while every instinct urged him to speak the truth burning in his chest. "Chancellor, with respect, the Terran Federation came here as equals seeking mutual cooperation, not as children requesting permission to exist." The laughter that followed was like a physical blow. War leader Thakmor rose from his seat, his insect-like form towering over the human ambassador as he spoke. "Equals." His translator converted his buzzing speech into words dripping with contempt. "Your species discovered faster than light travel 30 years ago. We have been crossing the void since before your son was born. You speak of equality while we have built empires spanning thousands of worlds." The Altarian representative joined the attack, his skin now showing patterns that Jean Wu's cultural briefings had identified as deep amusement mixed with pity. "Perhaps humanity fails to understand their true position in the galaxy. You are newcomers, barely evolved beyond your primitive origins. Your military consists of converted cargo ships and mining equipment," added a delegate from the Velkari Empire, her bird-like form ruffling with disdain. "In our last encounter, your finest warship was disabled by one of our patrol craft. You call this equality?" Admiral Lee made another note, her pen pressing hard enough to tear the paper. She had commanded that warship, had watched good people die because they were flying technology decades behind their enemies. But she also remembered how they had fought, how they had nearly won despite the odds. Chancellor Veltar raised one crystalline hand for silence, and the chamber immediately quieted. When he spoke again, his voice carried the casual cruelty of absolute power. We do not make these decisions from malice, young humans. We simply recognize reality. Your species would serve galactic civilization far better by focusing on what you do well. He paused, savoring the moment. Manual labor, resource extraction, basic manufacturing. Leave the complex matters of governance, exploration, and military affairs to those with proper experience. The words hit the chamber like poison gas. Other delegates nodded in agreement, treating the systematic dismantling of human dignity as reasonable policy discussion. They spoke of humanity's future as if discussing livestock management. Think of it as guidance, suggested the Zephyrian war leader with mock kindness. We will protect you from the dangers of space while you contribute your limited strengths to galactic prosperity. Jin Woo felt something break inside him as he looked around the chamber. These beings who claimed to represent advanced civilization were reducing his entire species to the role of servants and slaves. They spoke of protection while planning conquest, of guidance while designing chains. Admiral Lee stood beside him, her movement sharp and precise. Her silence was more threatening than any words could have been, but the assembled aliens mistook it for submission. The Terran Federation withdraws from these negotiations, Jinwoo announced, his voice cutting through the chamber's complacent murmur like a blade. We came here offering partnership between equals. You have made your position abundantly clear. He began gathering his documents with slow, deliberate movements, while Admiral Lee collected her data pads. The chamber watched with amused interest, like adults watching children throw a tantrum. We will remember this day, Jinwoo continued, his voice growing colder with each word. We will remember each of you, and we will remember exactly what you said about humanity's place in your galaxy. As the human delegation walked toward the exit, Chancellor Veltar's crystalline laughter echoed behind them like breaking glass. They'll crawl back within a solar cycle, he called out cheerfully, begging for the generous terms we offered today. Pride is a luxury their species cannot afford. The chamber erupted in agreement as the humans disappeared through the doorway, leaving behind a room full of aliens who had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. 6 months had passed since the human delegation walked out of Harmony Prime Station, and the galaxy had settled into an eerie quiet that made even the most confident council members feel uneasy. The space lanes that once buzzed with human merchant vessels now lay empty, their absence creating strange gaps in the normal flow of galactic commerce. Chancellor Veltar stood in his private chambers on the Kevvar homeworld, reviewing reports that should have brought him satisfaction, but instead filled him with growing concern. Through his crystalline fingers, he shuffled intelligence documents that painted a picture he didn't understand. Director Kesrin, he called his chief intelligence officer, explain these numbers to me again. The smaller Kevvar bowed respectfully before spreading holographic displays throughout the room. Chancellor, human space has gone completely silent. No diplomatic communications, no trade requests, no cultural exchanges. They have politely but firmly refused all contact with any council species. Good, Veltar replied, though his voice lacked conviction. They're learning their place. However, Kesrin continued carefully, our deep space monitoring stations are detecting unusual activity. Human industrial output has increased by over 300% in the past 6 months. Energy signatures from their systems suggest massive construction projects. War leader Thakmore materialized in the chamber via hologram, his insect form clicking with irritation. So the mammals are building factories. Perhaps they're finally accepting their role as suppliers for proper civilizations. But the intelligence director's next word sent cold fear through both leaders. War leader, that's not the most concerning development. Human military vessels have completely vanished from all border patrol routes. No training exercises, no fleet movements, nothing. For such a young species, this level of coordination suggests extensive central planning. On the neutral world of Altair Prime, Admiral Yolson of the Altarian Republic studied similar reports in her war room. Unlike the arrogant council leaders, she had fought against humans during the border conflicts and remembered their fierce determination. This silence isn't natural, she told her staff officers. Humans are emotional creatures. When angered, they typically respond quickly and loudly. This calculated withdrawal suggests something far more dangerous. Her aide, a younger Altarian whose skin showed patterns of confusion, gestured toward the tactical displays. Admiral, perhaps they're simply struggling to maintain their infrastructure without Council support? Yolson's skin shifted to deep red patterns, indicating serious concern. No, I've studied human military doctrine extensively. They have contingency plans for everything, including diplomatic failure. This silence means they're implementing something we've never seen before. Meanwhile, in the depths of human space, far from the prying sensors of alien intelligence networks, Admiral So-Min Lee stood in the command center of humanity's most classified facility. The massive underground complex stretched for kilometers beneath the surface of a moon that didn't appear on any galactic charts. Around her, holographic displays showed the progress of Protocol 7, contingency plans that had been purely theoretical until 6 months ago. Now they represented humanity's response to galactic rejection. Phase 1 construction is complete, reported Colonel Junho Kim, her aide since the early days of human space exploration. All hidden shipyards are operational and producing at maximum capacity. Admiral Lee nodded grimly as she watched the displays. Humanity had learned hard lessons during their brief time in space. While other species saw them as naive newcomers, humans had been preparing for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. "How many vessels are ready for deployment?" she asked. 3,742 combat vessels of various classes, Junho replied, all equipped with the new technologies developed during our isolation period. The numbers would have shocked the Galactic Council, but they represented only the beginning of humanity's true capabilities. While aliens had mocked human industrial capacity, they had failed to understand that humans had been building in secret from the very beginning. Back in Council space, reports continued to pile up on the desks of intelligence directors throughout the galaxy. Human colonies that had once welcomed alien researchers and diplomats now politely turn away all foreign visitors at their system boundaries. Energy shields of unknown design protected human worlds, while new space stations appeared as strategic jump points. Most disturbing of all, human communication networks had gone completely dark to outside monitoring. The species that had once eagerly shared cultural exchanges and scientific discoveries had vanished behind an impenetrable wall of silence. In the Zephyrian war chambers, tactical officers struggled to make sense of scattered intelligence reports. War leader, one of them buzzed nervously. Our border scouts report that human patrol vessels have completely disappeared from contested zones. Thakmore's mandibles clicked in what he hoped sounded like confidence. Excellent. They've abandoned their territorial claims. But his intelligence chief, a veteran of many campaigns, spoke the words that would haunt the Zephyrian leadership. War leader, respectfully, that's not how humans behave. When they retreat, they're usually preparing to attack from a different direction. Deep in the Sol system, Admiral Lee stood before a massive viewport showing construction docks where humanity's new fleets waited in silent rows. Each ship represented lessons learned from their humiliation at Council hands, technologies developed in secret, and strategies born from necessity. They wanted to see what humanity was truly capable of, she said quietly to her staff. They dismissed our restraint as weakness and our diplomacy as naivety. Colonel Kim looked at the assembled fleets with grim satisfaction. When do we show them the truth, Admiral? Admiral Lee's reflection in the viewport showed a smile that held no warmth. Soon, let them enjoy their sense of superiority a little longer. They're about to learn that there's a very important difference between choosing peace and being capable of war. The emergency klaxons wailed throughout the Galactic Council headquarters on Velcaris Prime as delegates rushed through the corridors in barely controlled panic. What had begun as a routine morning session had transformed into chaos when long-range sensors detected something that should have been impossible. Chancellor Veltar burst into the main assembly hall, his crystalline form reflecting his agitation in fractured light patterns. Around him, delegates from dozens of species crowded around holographic displays that showed readings their minds refused to accept. This cannot be accurate, Veltar demanded, pointing at the tactical screens with one sharp finger. Run the scans again. Check for equipment malfunction. Intelligence Director Kesrin's voice trembled as he spoke. Chancellor, We have confirmed the readings through 7 independent sensor networks. The data is accurate. The display showed massive fleet formations emerging from previously unknown locations throughout human space. Ships of designs no Council database recognized moved in perfect coordination, their numbers growing by the hour as more vessels dropped out of hyperspace. War leader Thakmor's insect form clicked frantically as he studied the readings. Impossible. Our intelligence estimates gave humanity 12 capital ships at most. These readings show thousands of vessels. Over 4,000 confirmed contacts, Kesrin reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Some are larger than our heaviest dreadnoughts. The energy signatures suggest technology we don't recognize. The chamber's communication arrays suddenly crackled to life, carrying a signal that originated from Earth itself. The familiar face of Ambassador Jinwoo Park appeared on the main screen, but his diplomatic formality had been replaced by cold, military precision. To the members of the Galactic Council, Jinwoo began, his words carrying the weight of absolute finality. 6 months ago, humanity attempted to join your community as equals. You made your position clear regarding our worth and place in your galaxy. Chancellor Veltar felt something cold settle in his chest as a human, continued speaking with calm certainty. The Terran Federation hereby withdraws from all galactic accords and treaties. Effective immediately, we establish a 50-light-year exclusion zone around all human territory and colonies. Any unauthorized vessels entering the zone will be destroyed without warning or negotiation. The chamber erupted in outraged voices, but Jinwoo's image continued speaking as if he could hear their protests. This is not a request for negotiation. This is not a diplomatic proposal. This is a statement of fact. Council forces currently operating within our new boundaries have exactly 36 hours to withdraw completely. War leader Thakmor's mandibles clicked in aggressive defiance. Empty threats from a species of primitives. They cannot enforce such claims against the combined might of the Council. But Admiral Yolson of the Altarian Republic had gone completely silent, her skin cycling through colors that indicated deep fear. She had studied human military doctrine more carefully than anyone else in the chamber, and she understood what the others refused to see. To demonstrate our resolve, Jinwoo continued from the screen. Observe the fate of those who test our determination. The transmission switched to tactical displays, showing real-time footage from the border regions. Council watching stations that had monitored human space for decades suddenly went silent, their signals cutting off one by one. Zephyrian patrol squadrons that had been probing the new exclusion zone simply vanished from all sensor networks. By the void, whispered a delegate from the outer systems. They're destroying everything within their claimed territory. But it was worse than simple destruction. The humans were demonstrating surgical precision, eliminating only military targets, while leaving civilian vessels untouched. Trading ships and passenger liners received escort to the border and safe passage out of human space. But any military vessel that lingered too long simply disappeared. Director Kesrin's hands shook as he updated the tactical displays. Chancellor, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different military outposts along the human border. They report being engaged by vessels using weapons technology decades ahead of our current capabilities. The transmission from Earth continued as Jinwoo's image returned to the screen. For those who question our capabilities, we offer the following demonstration. The display switched to show a Kethvar research station that had been studying human technology in a disputed system. As the Council watched in horror, human warships appeared around the station without any hyperspace signatures or sensor warnings. They had simply materialized as if they had been invisible. The research station's shields, considered the most advanced defensive technology in Council space, lasted exactly 14 seconds against weapons that seemed to ignore known laws of physics. How? Chancellor Veltar asked the empty air, his voice breaking. How did they hide this from us? Admiral Yolson finally spoke, her skin now showing patterns of resigned understanding. They didn't hide it. They built it. While we were laughing at their proposals and dismissing their capabilities, they were preparing for our rejection. The terrible truth settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. Humanity had never shown their true strength because they had hoped for peaceful cooperation. Every human military vessel the Council had encountered, every technology they had observed, had been deliberately limited to avoid provoking conflict. We never saw their real capabilities, Yeltsin continued, her voice filled with the weight of realization. Everything they showed us was theater, designed to make us underestimate them while they prepared for this moment. The communication from Earth ended with Jin Woo's final words echoing to the silent chamber. You wanted to know humanity's place in your galaxy. Now you understand. We reject your galaxy entirely. This is our space now, and you will respect our boundaries, or you will face the consequences. As the transmission ended, Chancellor Veltar stared at displays showing human fleets that had seemingly appeared from nowhere, wielding technology that made Council forces obsolete. They had awakened something they should have left sleeping. 3 weeks after humanity's ultimatum had shaken the galaxy, Chancellor Veltar stood in what remained of his once proud empire's command center. The crystalline walls that had once reflected his authority now seemed dull and cracked, much like his confidence in the natural order of things. Reports flooded in from across Kevvar space, each one more devastating than the last. Border worlds that had expanded freely for centuries now found themselves trapped behind invisible walls they dared not cross. Trade routes that had operated for millennia lay abandoned, their crews too terrified to risk entering the exclusion zones that humanity had carved out of the galaxy. Chancellor, his aide whispered nervously, we have received another formal request from the Terran Federation. Veltar's form dimmed as he read the message. It was written in the same polite diplomatic language that Ambassador Park had used months earlier, but the meaning was clear. Humanity was offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts to species that formally recognized their sovereignty and apologized for past insults. The first test of human resolve had come from war leader Thakmor himself. Convinced that the mammals were bluffing, he had personally led a squadron of Zephyrian heavy cruisers into the exclusion zone. The ships had simply vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no debris, nothing but empty space where they had been. When a rescue fleet arrived to investigate, they found only a single message buoy containing high-resolution footage of Thakmor's ships being systematically destroyed by weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The human vessels responsible had appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly, leaving behind only a warning that trespassers would receive no further mercy. In the Altarian Republic's capital, Admiral Yeltsin met with her government's leadership in an emergency session that would reshape their entire foreign policy. Unlike the other major powers, she convinced her people to swallow their pride early. The formal apology has been transmitted to Earth, she reported to the assembled ministers. We have acknowledged our mistakes during the peace negotiations and requested diplomatic relations. Her aide brought up holographic displays, showing the galaxy's new power structure. Admiral, the humans have responded favorably. They're offering us advanced defensive technologies and guaranteed protection from Zephyrian expansion. It was a complete reversal of fortune. The Altarians, who had joined in mocking humanity's proposals, now found themselves first in line to receive the benefits of human protection. Their border worlds, previously vulnerable to Zephyrian raids, were now safer than the core systems of major empires. In the Terran Federation's new capital fortress, a massive station that had appeared seemingly overnight at the edge of human space, Admiral So-Min Lee observed the transformed galaxy through reinforced viewports. The station itself was a statement of power, its weapon systems visible to any ship that approached, and its defensive shields generating energy readings that made Council scientists weep with envy. Beside her, Ambassador Jinwoo Park reviewed the flood of diplomatic communications that arrived hourly. 47 formal apologies so far, he reported with grim satisfaction. 62 requests for trade agreements, 38 applications for mutual defense pacts, and over 100 personal messages from individual council members claiming they always supported peaceful relations. Admiral Lee's expression remained cold as she watched human patrol fleets maintaining their positions at strategic jump points. Each vessel was a masterpiece of military engineering, incorporating technologies that humanity had developed during their months of silence. The Valkyrie Empire is offering to share their agricultural techniques. Jinwoo continued. The same species that suggested we become manual laborers is now begging us to accept their most advanced farming methods as tribute. Through the viewports, they could see the lights of human colonies flourishing under protection of fleets that had transformed from laughingstock to galactic superpower overnight. Civilian traffic moved freely within human space, while alien merchant vessels waited patiently at the borders, hoping for permission to enter. What about the major powers? Admiral Lee asked, though she already knew the answer. Chancellor Veltar transmitted a formal request for diplomatic reconciliation this morning. Jinwoo replied, "The Kethvar Empire is offering to recognize all human territorial claims and provide reparations for past insults." It was a complete surrender from the beings who had ruled the galaxy for centuries. The crystalline chancellor who had laughed at human proposals now begged for the chance to negotiate with the species he had dismissed as primitives. And the Zephyrians? Jinwoo's smile was sharp as a blade. They're too proud to formally surrender, but they withdrawn from all disputed territories along our borders. Our intelligence suggests they're facing internal rebellions from member worlds that want human protection instead of Zephyrian domination. Admiral Lee nodded as she watched a group of alien diplomatic vessels approaching the station under heavy escort. Each one carried representatives from species that had mocked humanity's peaceful intentions, now desperate to avoid humanity's military capabilities. The galaxy had learned too late that patience should never be mistaken for weakness, that choosing diplomacy was not the same as being incapable of war. Humanity had offered partnership as equals and been rejected with contempt. Now they stood as the power that others desperately sought to appease. They made their choice, Admiral Lee said quietly, watching the alien delegates prepare to beg for forgiveness. Now they lived with the consequences. The age of human restraint was over, and the galaxy would never be the same.